U.S. businesses. Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas. He serves as a member of the Banking, Intelligence, and Armed Services Committees. Senator, it's great to have you on this morning. Phase 3 is going to accomplish certain things. Are you of the mind that we are going to need some additional stimulus and maybe even an infrastructure plan that the president's proposed?
Good morning. It's good to be on with y'all. Well, the money from our Phase 3 legislation, the CARES Act, is beginning to reach small businesses. Next week, individuals are going to start receiving their checks from the IRS or from the Social Security Administration. Unemployment insurance, obviously, has already been increased for the 10 million people who tragically lost their job over the last 2 weeks. What I think I can say is that if that money runs out and we're still at the peak of this crisis, then the American people can be confident that Congress will act to ensure that our small businesses have the lifeline they need to get through, that families can continue to put food on the table and to keep a roof over their kids' head. What I don't think we'll see is extraneous measures in any future legislation, as was attempted in this last bill. We need to stay focused on what's necessary to get us through this crisis, and then ultimately what's necessary to respond to some of the problems that have been surfaced by this crisis, like our dependency on China for critical pharmaceuticals and medical devices. That's the kind of thing I think you might see in future legislation.
It's very complex, and there's a lot of different moving parts in terms of dealing with the virus, and that's very, very complex. There's all types of variables in terms of therapeutics and vaccines, and how long we need to social distance, and a rolling wave across the country, and then the fall comes. But then there's also reopening the economy and when it's going to be possible to even come close to returning to some sense of normal, and how many businesses it seems like are going to be permanently affected. Are you optimistic that life can return to normal even in 2020, Senator? Because that's the kind of worries that we have about the economy, not just the pandemic.
Sure. We have to get people back to work, and the economy has to get back on its feet. We have to realize, though, that it's tightly connected to the virus, its spread, and the perception of safety among our people. For instance, not that many governors or mayors really shut down parts of the economy. What they were doing was reflecting the American people's understandable concerns about contracting this virus. So we can't just say open it back up and then expect people to go back to restaurants or bars or movie theaters or what have you. We have to arrest the spread of the virus. We also have to develop steps so people can have confidence when they go back to work. That's one reason why the CDC has issued its guidance about wearing masks in public, why it's so important that we get tests that can be done rapidly, not just in hospitals and clinics, but perhaps at the workplace as well, that our state and local governments develop the capacity to identify quarantine persons who have the coronavirus and then trace their contacts, so we can move from the population-based measures that we see right now very soon into case-based measures. Those are the way that we arrest the spread of the virus, give people the confidence they need to get back to work or go back out to retail stores or restaurants and so forth. That's what it'll take to get the economy back up on its feet and get people back to work again.
Senator, you've been very outspoken in criticism of China. And I'm just leading into a question about the political divide in the country. And it's too simplistic, but there's one side that blames China. The other side blames the government's response to the virus as far as not being prepared. Do you think that matters to get into it's very political. Do you think it matters to get into that at this point? Is it self-defeating, or is it counterproductive to what we're trying to do for one or the other side to just keep harping on, in your case, China, and the other side, the response of the Trump administration?
Well, in fact, if you look at opinion surveys, you see that the American people do blame China, and that's where the blame belongs. And it's not just here in the United States either. It's all around the world. This virus could have been a local health problem in Wuhan. Instead, it's a global pandemic. So there's no doubt the government could have done some things differently, but they've done some things well, and they're adjusting every single day. That's what you see at the daily press briefings from the coronavirus task force. But what we have to keep in mind that it was the lies and the corruption of the Chinese Communist Party that helped turn this virus into a global pandemic, and our dependency on Chinese communists for things like masks and other medical devices and basic pharmaceuticals is a grave threat to our health and our safety, and something that we have to change right away.
If we don't find either a therapeutic or a vaccine between now and, let's say, the fall, how do you expect to reopen large parts of the country or of the economy?
Well, so first, I'm pretty optimistic that we can at least find therapeutics, because we have all of the world's best minds in life sciences and biology and medicine working on that. I called in January when I first began to study this virus for a Manhattan Project level effort, and that's exactly what you see all around the world. But in the meantime, as the measures we're taking right now help arrest the spread of it, we also need to start taking individual steps that can help people get back out into businesses, into the workplace, get back into retail establishments. Things like wearing masks, like maintaining social distance, like opening up the country, opening up different parts of the economy or the country on a rolling, gradual, calibrated basis. You know, what's good for New York City, it's probably not going to be good for Kansas City, definitely not going to be good for Star City, Arkansas. So there may be some businesses where people can maintain more distance in the workplace that open up. There may be parts of the country that can open up more quickly as well. That's the kind of things that are going to be done primarily by our governors, county executives, and mayors, with guidance and recommendations, of course, from the federal government. It's not just going to be a one-size-fits-all decision. It has to be calibrated, it has to be gradual, and it has to be fit to local conditions. I think when you have that mix of effort, then you can see people begin to get back to work, get back out into retail establishments, see the economy get back on its feet, until we ultimately have not just therapeutics, but an effective vaccine.
Well, I just wonder whether we can look at what happened in China and how quickly they reopened, and whether we can trust that they were able to reopen without without the virus popping up a lot of different places and causing a lot more death, or whether we can't trust those numbers. If we took it on face value, it looks like we could handle this. But if those urns are really holding thousands of bodies we don't know about, then I don't know whether we can trust them. So I guess that highlights the problem.
Yeah, well, of course you can't trust the Chinese Communist Party for that data. Many multiples of people in China have probably died and contracted this virus. You know, one example besides the urns, pardon me, is they just shut down movie theaters again last weekend after having opened up movie theaters all across the country. That's not the sign of a government that thinks it has a pandemic under control. Now, you can look at other places that had done a pretty effective job of containing the virus, like Singapore, which has recently seen a surge in cases again. It's important to be mindful that as we see cases begin to come down and hopefully deaths begin to decline, we still will have to take some cases as a full people, but also individually, to make sure that we don't see new sparks of the virus coming back. Because as the president said last weekend, the worst thing would be to declare victory over the virus before we have actually won the victory.
Right. All right, Senator, thank you. And
thank you.
We hope we can have you back on in the near future. Thank you very much, Senator Tom Cotton. Becky.